मतलब हर बारी उठ के 1000 ऊपर आ जाता है, ठीक है ना? So please bear with me for some more time. But the respite is that we have Dr. Batra here, who is, you know, I don't have enough words to express my gratitude to him for, you know, he's one of the jury, he was the jury chair, but to take out time from morning until the jury ends, there was not even a minute that he was away. Second is, he came in the morning, he was one of the first few people to be here, and for him, at his level, with his busy schedule, to dedicate this much of time for our events is something that I can only say, sir, we have gratitude for your believing in us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah. And the conversation that we're going to have, I think people are tired. They're wanting to have coffee there.
Good, it's good enough.
But the conversation that we're going to have,
It goes with homeopathy.
There was nobody else that we could think of who could bring more value to this topic. You know, and जब हम traditional sciences की बात करते हैं, the first thing that comes to our mind, and it was a myth until I met him, because we used to always say कि, you know, homeopathy को हम जब consider करते हैं, we always compare it with modern medicine. But I don't know what modern medicine का reference है. I think homeopathy is the most modern form of medicine that is there. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is one of the youngest systems of medicine in the world. It's just 250 years plus old. And it's a misconception that it's one of the oldest because it's sometimes mixed with Ayurveda, which is, of course, an old system of medicine. It's actually one of the youngest. And what is interesting is, as you mentioned, that according to World Health Organization, it's the youngest, but it's also the fastest growing. So it's growing at 25% for back-to-back for the last 5 years or so, while Big Pharma is growing at 10%. So that's 2.5 times the growth rate. Of course, there's a big gap between Big Pharma and homeopathy. But just to put some figures, because you know we are now in business world, so the world market for homeopathy last year was 6.6 lakh crores, and it's expected to go to about 15 lakh crores in the next few years. So when we are talking about a revival of a great system of medicine, then certainly it is homeopathy. And there are different reasons for this. There are many, many reasons. We don't have the time to go for all of them because I don't want to stand in the between, you know, diabetics who may be, you know, getting a sugar rush or a sugar low. So I'm just saying that, you know, let's, you know, just cut it short. But I think the 2 or 3 really important things. The first thing is the side effects of chemical medication. So do you know that every year it's a new kind of disease called iatrogenic disorders, which is drug-induced disorders. And every year more than 50,000 people die because of this, just because of this. In America alone, more than 350 people die every year, which is the equivalent of 1 plane crash. But when a plane crashes, everybody talks about it. But when people die like this, nobody talks about it. So you spoke about creating awareness. I think that's very important to create awareness for the kind of side effects that today chemical medicine has. We say that, yes, there's a pill for every ill, but every pill has an ill.
Absolutely.
So I think that's one of the most you know, difficult things. The second reason that I'd like to just also point out here is what somebody mentioned, one of the doctors in the earlier conversation that we had, was the rise of AMR, you know, the antimicrobial resistance which we are getting today. Now, this is not a problem with the antibiotics. It's a problem with us. So what's happened is that actually one of the biggest discoveries in modern medicine was the advent of penicillin. Because that happened, that is why surgeries got better, that's why there were post-operative complications got less. The problem is that, you know, there's always a human greed and we always want to get better, faster, quicker. And in this, you know, jhatpat kind of society that we are living, instant society with Instagram, wanting to have very, very quick results, what's happening is we are self-medicating ourselves. We are not even going to the doctor. So we are taking antibiotics ourselves. Now, when we are taking antibiotics ourselves, for problems we don't need antibiotics. I'm saying in the olden days, you used to have to do a test before actually using an antibiotic, a sensitivity test as it was called. And only what was suiting that particular bacteria, and it doesn't work for viruses. Today, a lot of problems are virus related. So self-treating yourself or going to the chemist and getting a prescription done or getting it off Google or whatever is somewhere where you're actually killing yourself. So when you actually need it, it doesn't work. Just to give you some figures again, because again we are talking about, the business world. So do you know that every year at least 300,000 people die of AMR, which could have been saved? And this is where I say that alternative systems of medicine play a very important role, because if you were to use homeopathy and other alternative systems of medicine in the early stages of infection, you may not need an antibiotic. And then you could save your life. So a lot of the people, so there are 3 lakh people who die every year because of AMR, antibiotic resistance, because it doesn't work for them. And there are other more than 10 lakh people who die because of respiratory infections and stomach infections, which are again children and old people, for a similar reason, because the antibiotic doesn't work on them. So you have a group of almost 13 lakh people who die unnecessarily, and so many lives could be saved.
This is this is startling facts, which we otherwise are unaware of. I'm so glad that you brought this up, sir. Dr. Batra, when we talk about traditional sciences, then there is Ayurveda, Unani, and these are the healing systems that have existed for a long period of time. Are these still relevant today?
So, I just like to summarize it in one line. We've always had, haldi doodh. Haldi doodh has now become turmeric latte, and you are paying more for it. It's relevant because this is something that always existed. I mean, even today, what are we doing? We are just taking our own, medicinal properties. We are taking them to America and abroad. We are getting, them IP registered, and then bringing back to India, and then we are paying a lot of money for it. Right. So whether you talk about turmeric, whether you talk about any other natural resource which was like a kitchen cabinet, which works so well for you. Correct. But today, just because it is branded and because it is well packaged and well marketed, correct, you actually end up paying more money for it. So it was always relevant. This is something which, I think time immemorial, we always understood this. Let me give you a small example. So, you all heard of measles, and measles is very, very common, and it actually happens more in the winter time. Now, if you remember in the olden days, we used to say कि माता निकली है, तो बच्चे के जो है till 15 days, don't take the child out. Now, why did we say this? We said it because measles used to come in winter, and we all know now that one of the side effects of measles is bronchopneumonia. And therefore, if you took the child out, and the child got exposed to winter, and then got a lung infection, and then got pneumonia, it could kill the child. Now, we had this practice earlier, but we used to say कि वो देवी के पास जाओ, मंदिर में जाओ, फिर ठीक हो जाएगा, उसके बाद में फिर, then you bring the child out after 2 weeks. The only thing is we didn't know the reason for it. So today, science is giving us a reason. And I've just given you this as one small example. So there are many such examples like this, which actually will then tell you that science gives rationality to what we were doing, but that doesn't mean that just because we did not have that rational reason, that it did not work and that it was not right. It was always there. And therefore, I'm saying going back to, Mother Nature, going back to the old things that we had, going back to Dadi Ma ke nuske, going back to what really worked for us. We can't just throw it away. It's like throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Just because the bathwater is dirty, you don't throw away the baby. So you got to use what is good.
Absolutely. I think I'm reminded by what Dimpiji used to always tell me, that just because you don't believe in it does not mean that it does not exist.
It's the same with God.
Absolutely.
Just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yes. This was about traditional sciences. We are talking about evolution from ancient wisdom to modern ways of practicing medicine. Now, the two things that I have kind of understood with over 200 conversations that I've done in the last almost 3 years is that there are two things that define where we are heading towards with modern medicine. One is we are heading towards integrated health. We are talking about holistic health. And it is not just about physical and mental health, it is about anything that works for creating that outcome, whether it is allopathy, whether it is homeopathy, whether it is Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, whatever it is about holistic health that works for creating an outcome. The second thing that I've understood is that we are moving towards predictive and preventive healthcare. This leads to personalized medicine. Today we have genomics where we understand what is going inside our body, what is the makeup of our body, so that we can personalize the treatment, ensuring what will work. The challenge is whenever a healing system has to work, it has to work for the masses. So my question to you is, how can we create personalized medicine at a mass level?
Well, that's not very difficult actually, because you can actually use technology to do that. I'm saying we created many, many years ago a software that kind of like a virtual clinic. And, from everything that is comes as a disappointment or as an, kind of a problem, there's always a solution. So when COVID came, we had 200 and odd clinics and we are kind of into retail health, and patients could not come to us. And therefore, we had to create a software which actually then we moved 100, kind of computers into the top doctors and to their residences and created a virtual model where they could actually talk online with people. Now, today, that's become a very successful virtual model for us. And we are today, entering different countries with that model. And we are seeing a lot of patients because of that. So if you have a technological model, it allows you reach. But what it also does is, because it's still a personalized model, you're not giving mass prescriptions. You're not giving OTC products. You're not saying, take this for headache. You're not saying, because you know that there are more than 200 drugs for migraine in homeopathy, and you're still selecting the right one after talking to the patient and after personalizing your treatment. So you can still do it on Zoom calls. You can do it, like I said, on a virtual clinic platform. You can use technology actually to still keep the personal thing going, and yet you can get reach.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Dr. Batra, we are talking of evolution, and we were talking about आपने जो एग्जांपल दिया था कि दूध में हल्दी डाल के वर्सेस टर्मरिक लाते, रिलीजन में भी हम बहुत सारी चीज़ें प्रैक्टिसेस करते हैं रिलीजियस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, which we are unable to rationalize. And when we go back to these priests and we ask them, when they are unable to explain to us, they say कि ये ritual है, ये करना है, ये प्रथा चलती आ रही है. So I think it is probably where we have failed to pass on the science to the next generation over the last few generations, where we forgot the reason why it was being done, right? And today we are looking at finding a scientific answer to why we are doing or why we have been doing certain things. Do you think there is enough investment happening in development of these ancient wisdom, old traditional sciences by R&D, clinical trials, education around it, to keep pace with how people understand the value of our traditional sciences?
So my one-word answer is no. Clearly, there's not enough that's being done, and clearly a lot more can be done. Just to give an example, in the last budget, homeopathy got 20 crores for R&D in India, all of India. Now, that's very minuscule. There's actually nothing at all. We need to do a lot more R&D. Because we need to talk in the language which people understand. We need to talk in the language which modern medicine understands. And to do this, and having said that, let me also mention that in the last few years, there has been a lot of research that has been done in homeopathy as well. There have been more than 300 double-blind clinical trials that have been done, which actually prove the efficacy for various diseases and success, whether it is allergies, whether it is asthma, whether it is, skin problem like psoriasis, and so many other disorders, neurological problems as well. So there is enough clinical evidence, but it's not good enough. And we need to do much, much more. So I think the more we do it, the more acceptance we will get.
What is it that we could do, sir? Because, when we look at the private sector, when we looked at Ayurveda, you have Daburs and Himalayas of the world that have come in. When we look at homeopathy, you have done a commendable job in terms of not just creating access to homeopathy care, but also coming up while doing research, coming up with products that can be really useful. And if the opportunity in the market is large enough, why is it that people are not investing in this? Why is the private sector not investing enough in this? What's holding them back?
So that's a good question, but I think one of the reasons is the plus and the minus of the same thing. The problem is because homeopathy is personalized treatment, therefore it cannot be mass replicated. Just to give an idea, for example, all over the world today, the largest pharmaceutical company today is a French company. It's Byron, which works out of Lyon. And the largest selling things all over the world are not homeopathic doctors and homeopathic services and homeopathic practices, but homeopathic products which are OTC. So for example, every Boots today in UK has a homeopathic product, an OTC product. If you go to any pharmacy in France, anywhere, even if you go to the villages, you'll find a separate division for homeopathic products. But these are not homeopathic basic medicines. These are all OTC products. So it's very difficult, therefore, to invest in an industry which is personalized. Because then you're dependent on doctors, you're dependent on quality, you're dependent on quality care, you're depending on training, you're dependent on retraining. I'm saying continued medical education, then you're interested in software development, then you're interested in IT development. I'm saying there's a lot of things that, that goes around it. And therefore it doesn't make a very interesting business model for people to actually invest in.
And Dr. Batra, since you mentioned software, technology, advancement, etc., we all hear about AI, big data, machine language, which is impacting the research, which is impacting the personalized medication. Technology is a part of everything that we are doing, and we understand it's a part of the pharmaceutical industry as well. How can tech advancements like AI be used in our ancient wisdom and traditional sciences to not just keep up with the modern times, but to help it evolve to become relevant to how they can be used in today's times? And while you answer this, because I know that you have been a big believer of technology, how have you used AI in homeopathy in your practice across the country? So 2 questions.
All right, so I'll take the second one first. Because in 1982, when I first started my first kind of computerized clinic, and I actually created a software, and perhaps the world's first electronic healthcare record anywhere. There was only one Italian company that was doing it. Again, the idea was that I invested in computers, and I still remember people laughing at me and saying, because I borrowed money to buy a kind of it was called an Eagle something at that time, Usha Eagle. And that was a large computer, and I remember that it had a green screen, and our eyes would get bad, so we had to put a screen before it. And I remember I had a dot matrix printer, which was so large that every time I took out a prescription, the whole building shook. Because it was a dot matrix picture, it went tuck, 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 and the whole building shook. And I remember people laughing at me saying, boss, aapne, bank se loan liya hai, 1.5 lakh rupees ki machine kharidi hai. And that time you could have got an MD doctor for 15,000 rupees a month. What's wrong with you? You could have hired 10 doctors. But that was my vision. That was my time to say that, that this is something which is very good for the future. This is something which is required. And maybe it came from my personal experience as well. Because I'll just share with you that I have a terrible handwriting. And even today, only my secretary...
All doctors have, sir.
Well, that's because we think faster than we write. And a lot of my love letters, which I wrote to my girlfriend at that time and my wife, they used to be taken to the pharmacist to be read. The chemist read them. So a chemist can actually read a doctor's handwriting and nobody else can.
कभी किसी ने misread नहीं किया, sir? Errors, medical errors?
So lots of them. So many people die because of it, which is why I computerized prescriptions, to make sure that they come through a computer and therefore they're very easy to keep. Now, having said that, then we grew it a lot. But technology also comes at a very heavy cost. So today what happens is every 5 years, maximum, your hardware gets outdated. You have to throw it away, literally. And you have to reinvest. Now, when we are talking about 225 clinics in 10 countries, we are talking about a lot of money that goes into that. Then the software gets outdated very quickly, because every time you alter your business model, every time you start something new, every time you start a new treatment, every time you have a new medical outcome, everything changes again. I'm saying, let me also mention this, by the way, that when I was 60 years old, I was the oldest student in Harvard. I did a program in medical excellence. And my son sent me to Harvard. It's, like reverse engineering. I'm saying we send our children to Harvard to study, but my son sent me, no, Papa, you must go there and study. It was so difficult for me to be the oldest student there. But one of the things that I learned over there was today what is required in medical excellence is to have proper, outcomes, medical outcomes, which must be measured and objective. For the last 15 years, I've been involved in a lot of research in making sure that these are actually shared with our patients, that we make these protocols and then they are shared. So it's a big challenge but every time new technology comes, new protocols come, new medical protocols come, and then the outcome changes. The processes change. If the processes changes, then your software changes. Then again, you are hiring and you've got a whole team of software engineers. So you've got hardware, you've got software. So it's not easy to upkeep technology. Having said that, I still believe it's very useful. We've used it to actually use it for diagnosis, for actually getting the right medicine for 98,000 permutations and combinations in homeopathy. As you know, it's very personalized. We've also started using for the last few years AI in hair and skin, which are two of the kind of big bucket disease that we treat, of course, medically. So within 1 minute, putting your head into a machine, you can actually come to know how long will it take for your hair to fall back, what will you look like 5 years from today. It can tell you what are the kind of 20-page reports on the kind of skin that you have, what kind of product you should be using for your skin. So I think we are using it already, but again, that's very expensive because you are then putting all these AI machines all over the country and all over the world. So it's a costly thing, but I think it's a passion, ultimately. It's a passion to do the best for whatever you can, for your people, for your patients, and get the best outcomes for them. So you don't think of money, you don't think of, of getting returns. Ultimately, I think if you do something good and with a clean heart, money will always come.
Absolutely, absolutely. My next question to you is my last question because I see that time's up screen. And, something that I really feel that you have made a difference to the industry is also because traditional sciences have not found validation when it comes to drugs, the medicines. There's a challenge around exporting Ayurveda medicine from India to other countries because those countries do not recognize or approve those drugs. Same thing while homeopathy was from Germany.
Yes.
But it was not finding acceptance in many other countries. But you from India have taken the initiative to take homeopathy to many other countries. You opened a clinic in London. In Middle East, you opened a center. Getting approval in Middle East is like, I can understand what you may have gone through. And you opened a virtual clinic in Malaysia recently, just 3 days ago?
Yes.
3 days ago. Your passion is taking it there. What is it that you think we as a nation, our country, Ayush Ministry needs to do to get this validation across the world for the medicines which the world is now, same thing as haldi दूध में डाल के, उनको validation मिल रही है, हमारे को नहीं मिल रही है. So what do you think our country needs to do?
I'll very quickly raise 3 points because we are running out of time. The first, of course, is I think the need is awareness. We really need to create a lot of awareness for homeopathy internationally as well because, and this is really the government's job to do. And I think they've done extremely well for yoga because today you have an International Yoga Day. I've been writing also to the Prime Minister and telling him that why don't we have a World Homeopathy Day? And they did write back to me and say that, yes, we will think about it at some stage now. Then, of course, COVID came in between and then everything got lost again. It needs a lot of persuasion, but I think if one person can do it, it's the Prime Minister of India, who can actually take it to the United Nations and make it happen. So having awareness of that kind and created by the government is something which I think is very important. The second thing, unfortunately, is that, we are part of Ayush, and homeopathy is the last part of Ayush. It's the H. Ayurveda is the first. So I don't think we are getting that much of representation and that much of awareness creation as compared to what Ayurveda is getting in India. In India, homeopathy is the third largest system of medicine, while in the world is the second largest, just to give an idea. Finally, I just want to mention that homeopathy today is recognized in 179 countries of the world. And Dr. Batra's is only in 10. So I'll just end with this little quote. There's a very long way to go. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have many promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a ritual that I do with Dr. Batra, and he knows it. I don't know whether he's understanding the hint, because apart from what he does as a homeopathic doctor, he lives his life focused on fulfillment, which means apart from homeopathy, he enjoys environment, so he's taken on to photography. He's done exhibitions, shows. He used to like art, so apart from collecting art, he took on to becoming an artist. And he loves listening to music. So do you get the hint? He took on to singing. So हर बारी में एक गाना.
Okay, 2 lines for all of us in the wellness space. And this goes out to all of you because I think this is ultimately the wish for wellness. Because we all wish for a very happy and healthy world. And this is the kind of wish that I have for the next generation, is the wish that I have for my grandson. And so I'll just hum 2 lines from an old Kishore Kumar number for all of you. And I hope that'll give all of us a happy ending. आचल के तुझे मैं लेके चलूं एक ऐसे गगन के तले जहाँ गम भी न हो आंसू भी न हो बस प्यार ही प्यार पले आचल के तुझे मैं लेके चलूं एक ऐसे गगन के तले जहाँ गम भी न हो आंसू भी न हो बस प्यार ही प्यार पले एक ऐसे गगन के तले एक ऐसे गगन के तले एक ऐसे गगन के तले